Chapter 22. The Medicine Woman. The Return. Saya was waiting at the fallen oak when they emerged from the eastern path on the morning of the second day. The sun had barely cleared the grey ridge, painting long shadows through the twisted birches. She had been there since before dawn, though she would not have admitted to the eagerness that had brought her so early. They looked tired. The girl's boots were caked with mud of the wrong colour, euros too dark, with that faint violet sheen that spoke of deep rot. The old man's coat was torn at the shoulder, a clean rip as though something sharp had caught it. But they walked steadily, upright, alive. More than alive. Whole. Saya stood as they approached. "Does it still stand?" she asked without preamble. The old man nodded slowly. "It stands. The seal holds." He paused, searching for words in her language. Verkuth, Temnash, Karlvar, the lock, still, strong. "For how long?" she asked in the common tongue. He held up both hands, fingers spread, then hesitated. "Some years yet. Not many, but some." His face grew darker. "But the harmony weakens. The lock. It will not hold forever." "And then?" His next words came in broken pieces, half in her language, half in common, hands gesturing to fill the gaps his vocabulary could not reach. "The sleeping world. It stirs. Old people, euros, ancient people, euros, they wake. Not dead. Never dead. Just sleeping behind wall." He made a gesture like water flowing. "Wall weakens. They push through." "Can we fight them?" Saya asked. He shook his head firmly. "No fight. No win. When they come, living here." He gestured at the forest around them, then made a sweeping motion westward, his hand trembling slightly. "Need to walk back. Find new lands. Safer lands." Saya felt cold despite the morning sun. "How far west?" "Cannot say. Depends on many things." He held his hands close together, then slowly spread them apart. "The old air, it grows. Like water finding cracks. Where it goes, new life cannot breathe. Old life, yes. New life, no." Saya's mind raced. Some years, not many. And then her people, all the settlements, everyone east of the ridge. "We must leave, all of us?" "Someday, yes. Maybe not today. Maybe not next year. But someday." He met her eyes. "I tell you now so you can. Make ready, teach people, watch for signs. When they come, walk west. Do not stay, do not fight, just walk." The young woman spoke up, her voice quiet. "We'll send warning, when it's close, when we know." She glanced at the old man, something passing between FEMA euros and understanding, a shared burden. "He'll know. He always knows." The mistranslation. "What you do at the standing place?" Saya asked. "You just look? Or you do something to make lock stronger?" The old man seemed to consider how to explain. "I measure." He mimed writing, then holding up his stick and looking at the tip. "The boundary, it has." He struggled, then said a word in his own language that Saya didn't know. "Hemsha?" She tried. "The word for a river's current." No. It's like he hummed a single note, then hummed another note that clashed with the first. "When two songs fight?" Discord. Bad harmony." "Yes. Boundary has. Harmony. Special harmony. I measure if harmony changes." He made a gesture like plucking a string. "If it changes too much, too fast, lock breaks sooner." "And the harmony now?" He rocked his hand side to side. "Still good, still strong," but he made a slow downward motion. "Falling, like sun at evening, still light, but darkness comes." Saya nodded slowly. Then, trying to lighten the weight of such terrible knowledge, she asked, "And if harmony too broken, you sing better song to fix?" The old man actually laughed at Euro's a short, surprised bark of sound. "I cannot sing. Very bad singer. My singing breaks more things." He gestured to the young woman. "She sings better. But this kind of song," he shook his head. "No singing can fix. Only watch, measure, know when to run." The girl smiled slightly. "He really is a terrible singer. The birds leave." "In my defense," he said in the common tongue, with the air of an old argument, "that only happened twice." "3 times, she corrected gently. "The third time doesn't count. Those were hostile birds." Despite everything, the talk of walls breaking and ancient peoples returning and the need to flee to the western sea, Saya found herself wanting to smile. There was something deeply human in their banter, something that made the impossible truths easier to bear. The evening watch. Saya offered them food and a place to rest before they continued west. There was a hunter's shelter not far from here, a lean-to built against a rock face where her people sometimes stayed when tracking the grey elk herds. They accepted with quiet gratitude. As the sun began to sink, Saya gathered firewood while they settled in. She worked slowly, deliberately, watching them from the corner of her eye. The young woman Lyra, the old man had called her Onsia, moved with practiced ease around him. Not hovering, not fussing, but simply attending. She checked the torn shoulder of his coat, tutted softly, and produced a needle and thread from her pack. He sat patiently while she stitched, his hand resting on her knee in absent comfort. When the fire was built, they sat close. Not because the evening was particularly cold, it wasn't, not yet, but because they seemed to occupy the same space as naturally as 2 trees growing from the same root. Lyra leaned against his shoulder while they ate the dried meat and journey bread Saya provided. His arm settled around her in a gesture so automatic, so unremarked, that it spoke of long habit. When she shivered slightly as the wind picked up, he adjusted his cloak to cover them both without interrupting the conversation he was attempting to have about the different types of rot. Saya watched this with growing fascination and something like unease. The girl was young, 20 winters perhaps, maybe 25? It was hard to tell with Western people. They aged differently, their soft lives keeping their skin smooth longer. But the old man, his hands were weathered, knuckles thick with old breaks healed crooked. His face was lined deep around the eyes and mouth. His beard was grey shot through with white. An old man's hands. An old man's face. But his eyes. Saya had seen many elders in her long years as medicine woman, had watched them age, watched the light in their eyes dim as the body grew tired, as the spirit prepared for the journey beyond. There was a quality to old Isa, a looking inward, a softening, a readiness to let go. This man's eyes held none of that. They were clear as spring water, deep as old wells, alert, watchful, carrying something that felt less like age and more like accumulation, as though he had simply kept adding years without ever growing ready to release them. How long? She wondered. How long has he been old man? Did he look this way when my grandmother's grandmother was young? When these trees were saplings? The thought should have frightened her. Instead, it explained things. The weight the forest had recognized. The way he spoke of ancient peoples and breaking locks with the flat certainty of someone describing the next season's weather. The weariness that hung around him like morning mist. Not the weariness of a body that had worked too hard, but the weariness of a mind that had carried the same burden for too long. And the girl beside him, leaning into his warmth with the unconscious trust of deep love. Did she know? Did she understand what she had bound herself to? Saya looked at Lyra's face in the firelight and saw the answer there. She knows. Maybe not the details, maybe not how many centuries. But she knows he is not normal, knows he will not age as she ages. And she loves him anyway. Or perhaps, Saya thought, that is exactly why she loves him. Because he will never leave her. Not until the very end. The thought carried both comfort and horror in equal measure. The Shimmer Death. They broke camp at first light. Saya had planned to send them on their way with a simple farewell, but something a Euro's instinct, perhaps, or the morning birds calling strange warnings to Euros made her decide to walk with them to the boundary stones. They had been traveling perhaps an hour when the air itself began to feel wrong. Saya stopped, her hand going up in the hunter's signal for danger. The old man halted immediately, his head tilting as though listening to something beyond hearing. The girl's hand moved to a knife at her belt. There, Saya breathed, pointing ahead to where the path curved around a stand of old willows. The air was moving in a way air should not move. It rippled like water disturbed by a stone, but vertically, in a column roughly the height of a man. Through the distortion, the trees beyond looked bent and strange, their colors shifting through hues that had no names. The shimmer pulsed with a rhythm like slow breathing, and where it touched the ground, the grass had turned to something crystalline and black. Kethnar, Saya whispered. Shimmer Death. One of the worst of the eastern anomalies. Invisible until you were almost upon it, and absolutely lethal. She had seen a young hunter walk into one 3 years past. He had simply stopped, frozen mid-step, his body hardening into something like glass, like stone, like nothing that had ever been alive. They'd left him there as a warning marker. Back, she hissed, gesturing urgently. We go around, far around, very far. But the old man was staring at the Shimmer Death with the intense focus of someone reading a difficult text. He tilted his head one way, then the other, held up his walking stick and pointed it toward the anomaly, muttering something under his breath. Old man, Saya said urgently. We must go. Now. That thing kills. He said absently, still staring. Yes. Kills by frequency disruption. Shatters the coherence pattern of living tissue. He spoke as though describing weather. Then we RUN, Saya said, pulling at his sleeve. He looked at her with those two clear eyes. Or we walk through it. Saya felt her blood go cold. That is madness. You saw what I said, Euros people die. Turn to stone. Cannot walk through death. Not through, he corrected patiently. Around. But while inside it. He turned to Lyra. Remember the marsh wraith? Same principle. We match the frequency, we become part of the pattern. It won't register us as foreign matter to be disrupted. Lyra's face was pale, but she nodded. Clockwise spiral, descending pitch. Counterclockwise this time. The shimmers rotating opposite. He glanced back at Saya. Easier to show than explain. Stay here. If we turn to stone, well, at least you'll have an interesting story. Before Saya could protest to Euros, before she could grab him, stop this suicidia Euros, he began to walk toward the Shimmer Death. But not straight toward it. He walked in a careful arc, his feet tracing a spiral pattern on the ground, humming a single low note that made Saya's teeth ache. Lyra followed exactly 3 paces behind, matching his steps perfectly, matching the hum. They looked like they were performing some ritual dance, some mad ceremony. The spiral tightened as they approached the rippling column of wrong air. And then they were at its edge. Saya held her breath. The old man's humming changed pitch. Euros descended in a smooth glide like a stone falling into deep water. His spiral tightened further, and he stepped into the shimmer. His outline bent. His body seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously, colors bleeding wrong. But he didn't stop, didn't freeze, didn't crystallize into dead matter. He kept walking his spiral, kept humming his descending note, and the Shimmer Death pulsed around him, as though confused, as though uncertain whether he was there at all. Lyra followed, her face set with absolute concentration. As she entered the shimmer, her form distorted the same way Euros bent, stretched, bleeding wrong color see Euros, but she matched his spiral exactly, matched his hum exactly, and the anomaly treated her the same way it treated him. Like they weren't there. Like they were part of it. The spiral continued through the center of the shimmer, then began to open outward on the far side. The humming climbed back up in pitch. Their forms solidified back into normal shapes. And then they were through, standing on the far side of the shimmer, death, whole and living, and looking back at Saya with expressions that mixed concern and mild curiosity. The old man called across, his voice slightly distorted by the rippling air between them. "Walk wide around. Meet us on the path." Saya stood frozen for a long moment. That should have killed them. That absolutely, certainly should have killed them. They walked inside the shimmer, death, and it did not even notice them. She shook herself and began the long detour around the anomaly, her mind spinning. The questions. When she caught up to them on the far side, Saya grabbed the old man's arm. "Explain. Now. How you still alive?" He seemed to consider his words carefully. Everything he gestured broadly. Everything has a pattern. He hummed again, that same resonant note. A song it sings. Very quiet, but always singing. The shimmer, death, it sings one song. Living things sing different song. When songs clash a Euros Kethnar. Death. So you sang its song? Matched the pattern, yes. Became part of its frequency. So it didn't know we were foreign. Didn't try to. He made a crushing gesture. Make us match. And you learned this how? Saya demanded. Who teaches how to walk through death? The death teaches, he said simply. By watching. By measuring. By, he tapped his head. By understanding the patterns. Many years of watching. Many years of measuring. Many years, Saya thought. How many? How many centuries of watching death until you learn to walk through it? Could I learn this? She asked. He looked at her seriously. Maybe. With time. With practice. But he gestured back at the shimmer, death. First practice should not be with thing that kills. Should practice with smaller patterns. Safer patterns. He smiled faintly. I have died many times while learning. Is not pleasant. Do not recommend. You died? Nearly died, Lyra corrected quietly. Many times. He's being dramatic. There was that incident with the resonance pool, he mused. You weren't breathing for 2 minutes, she said flatly. That counts as mostly dead. Only mostly, he agreed cheerfully. Saya shook her head. These people were mad. Completely mad, and yet they had walked through a shimmer, death, like stepping through a door. Your people, she said slowly. The Western people. They know you can do this? Gods, no, Lyra said. They'd burn him as a demon, or worship him as a saint. Either way would make everything more complicated. So you hide what you are. We are practical, the old man said. Truth is valuable. But timing of truth is more valuable. Some things people are not ready to know. Like the fact that in 10 years, the world would break and ancient peoples would return and everyone would need to flee to the Western Sea. Like the fact that this old man might be hundreds of years old and could walk through death by humming. Like the fact that everything she knew was temporary, balanced on edges she couldn't see. Yes. Some truths needed time. The parting. They reached the boundary stones as the sun touched its highest point. Saya stopped at the line where Kale and land became the neutral forest that became, eventually, the western lowlands. You go west now, she said. It was not a question. Yes. Long walk still. Many days. He paused. Thank you for letting us pass. For testing us. For understanding. Saya nodded slowly. Then, making a decision that surprised even herself, she said, "I will visit your tower by the lake. When snow comes 3 times, maybe, or sooner, if the eastern changes come faster." His eyebrows rose. "You know of my tower?" "The forest knows. The forest tells me things." She tapped her chest. "And I need to learn more. About patterns. About frequencies. About walking through death without dying." She smiled without humor. "If my people must eventually run west, I should know what we run toward. Should know what waits beyond the lowlands." "The tower is difficult to reach," he warned. "Many refuse the journey." "I have walked through difficult places," Saya said. "I will find the way." "Then I will welcome you," he said, "as you have welcomed us." He reached into his pack and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in oilcloth. "For you, payment for safe passage." She unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a collection of dried herbs she didn't recognize, and a piece of parchment covered in symbols and drawings. A map, she realized. A map of safe paths through the eastern corrupted lands, marking clean water sources, safe shelter, areas to avoid. Knowledge that could save her people's lives. She couldn't find words. This is worth more than passage. Worth more than gold. "Knowledge for knowledge," he said. "You told me where the rot spreads fastest. I give you paths that are still clean." He pointed to a notation on the map. "This changes. In time, these paths will no longer be safe. But for now, they hold." Saya carefully rewrapped the precious map. "When I visit, I bring knowledge too. About eastern changes. About old places waking. Fair trade." "Fair trade," he agreed. Lyra stepped forward and, to Saya's surprise, pressed something into her hand. A small carved stone, smooth and warm. "For the journey. When you come west, show this to anyone who challenges you. They'll know you have safe passage." "Who will know?" Saya asked. "Those who need to," Lyra said simply. The old man was already turning to leave, his walking stick planted firmly on the western side of the boundary stones. But he paused, looked back. "Saya, medicine woman, keeper of your people." "Yes." "When the locks break, when the old air comes, do not try to fight it. Do not try to hold your land." His voice was gentle but absolutely firm. "I know this is hard. I know this is your home, your ancestors' home, but the old air does not care for courage or love of land. It only cares for what can breathe it and what cannot. Your people cannot breathe it. So you walk west. You walk and you live. That is all that matters." Saya felt a tightness in her throat. "I understand." "I hope you do," he said quietly. "This knowledge is hard to accept, but it's truth nonetheless." Then he turned and walked west, Lyra at his side, and the forest swallowed them like water closing over stones. Saya stood at the boundary for a long time after they vanished, holding the map and the carved stone, thinking about shimmer deaths and spiral patterns and the way the girl had leaned against the old man like he was the only solid thing in a world of shifting water. Time, she thought. We have time yet to prepare. Time to teach my people that their home is not this ground, but each other. That we can walk west and still be Kael'den, as long as we walk together. She looked down at the map, at the careful notations in a hand that had drawn many maps over many years. 3 years, she decided. Maybe sooner. I will visit this tower. I will learn what I can about patterns and frequencies and walking through death. Because if I am to lead my people when the time comes, I should know what I'm leading them toward. She turned back toward her settlement, toward her people who did not yet know that their world had an expiration date, and began to plan. Behind her, the shimmer death pulsed its slow rhythm, breathing in and out, killing anything that did not match its frequency. Ahead of her, smoke rose from the Kael'van cook fires, and children laughed in the meadow, and life continued in the moment before the knowing. 10 years, she thought again. Make them count. Far to the west, the travelers walked in comfortable silence. After an hour, Lyra spoke. She's going to visit. Yes, Fenris said. She knows you're not normal. Yes. She's going to have a lot of questions. Yes. Good questions. Hard questions. Fenris sighed. Yes. Lyra smiled slightly. You like her? He glanced at her in surprise. I respect her. There's a difference. You respect lots of people. You don't usually teach them frequency matching spiral patterns. She's a keeper. Like us, keepers should share knowledge. Lyra let it rest. Then, after another long silence, you were vague with her. I gave her truth. The seal weakens. Someday it fails. That's all anyone needs to know. And when that day comes? Then everything east of the Grey Ridge becomes uninhabitable by human life. The miasma expands, the old air spreads, and anything that can't adapt either runs or dies. His voice was flat, factual. Another place lost to the old world's return. Lyra took his hand and squeezed it gently. We'll warn them. Give them time to get out. That's all we can do, he said quietly. They walked on in silence, leaving the eastern borderlands behind, carrying maps and measurements and the weight of knowing what comes next. The boundaries held for another day,